The news said, "Anonymous surgeon saves life in 6-hour operation." Watching as a family, my mom said, "I wish Emma could be this successful too." Then my face appeared on TV. Doctor Emma Rodriguez, neurosurgery specialist. My name is Emma Rodriguez. I'm 29 years old, and in my family, I'm known as just a nurse. In reality, I'm one of the country's youngest neurosurgeons. Today, this secret will finally come out. Friday evening, I'm at the family house, as usual. My mother, Linda, father, Robert, older brother, David, and sister-in-law, Jessica, have gathered in the living room. David graduated from medical school last month and now works as a general practitioner at a hospital. The family is proud of him. "Emma, dinner is ready," my mother called from the kitchen. "Tell David how your work life is going." When we sat at the table, David began talking excitedly. "I'm learning new things at the hospital every day. Yesterday, I entered the operating room for the first time, just as an observer, of course." "How exciting," said Dad. "When will you perform your first surgery?" "It's still too early. I need at least 2 more years of training." Mom turned to me. "You also work at the hospital, Emma. How's it going?" "It's going well," I said briefly. The same answer I always gave. "Nursing is a tough profession," Jessica said. "But when David becomes a doctor, maybe some opportunities will open up for Emma too." David smiled. "Emma is already a very good nurse. But of course, being a doctor is a different level." I'd been listening to these kinds of conversations for years. While my family never tired of discussing David's achievements, my work was always seen as a supporting role. The truth was, I was an assistant chief of medicine and neurosurgery specialist at St. Mary's Hospital. I had finished medical school at 23, completed my specialization at 27. I was currently one of the surgeons performing the country's most complex brain operations. So, why was I hiding it? Because when I started studying medicine, my family was shocked. "Girls don't become doctors, they become nurses," they said. "It's too hard, too stressful. You won't be able to get married," they warned. I persisted stubbornly, but I received no support during that period. When I graduated, they said, "Now it's time to get married and have children. Quit being a doctor." I changed cities, both to advance my career and to escape family pressure. But they had supported David becoming a doctor from the beginning, with the logic that men become doctors, they support families. Now, while David was a new graduate, I was a surgeon with 5 years of experience, but my family didn't know this. After finishing dinner, we moved to the living room. We turned on the TV, and the evening news was starting. "We're sharing with you the medical miracle that happened this morning at St. Mary's Hospital," said the news anchor. "The brain tumor surgery of 6-year-old Tommy Rodriguez lasted 6 hours. The surgeon who performed the operation doesn't want to give his name yet." My family began watching with interest. "Performing brain surgery on such a young child is very risky," David said. "The surgeon must be very experienced." The news continued. The surgeon leading the surgical team is known as one of the country's youngest neurosurgeons. Hospital management announced that they want to keep the surgeon's identity secret. "I wish I could perform such difficult surgeries too," David said, with a dreamy expression. Mom turned to me. "I wish Emma could be this successful too. Nursing is nice, of course, but being a doctor is a different level." I smiled inwardly. If they knew I had performed that surgery. The news continued. "Now we have a live connection with the surgeon who performed the operation." The hospital corridor appeared on the TV screen. The camera focused on a doctor whose face wasn't visible at first. "Dr. Rodriguez," the reporter said, "can you give us information about this surgery?" My heart raced. That was my voice. "Tommy's condition was very critical," I said on television. "The tumor was very close to the brain's motor cortex. We removed it with 6 hours of meticulous work." The family was listening attentively. "How does it feel to perform such difficult surgeries at such a young age?" the reporter asked. "Age doesn't matter. Experience matters. I've been doing neurosurgery for 5 years." At that moment, the camera angle changed and my face became fully visible. "Dr. Emma Rodriguez, neurosurgery specialist," the reporter said. The living room froze. Everyone was looking at the TV, then at me, then back at the TV. Mom dropped the glass in her hand, glass fragments scattered on the carpet. Is this you?" David whispered. My interview continued on TV. This surgery was particularly difficult because our patient is very young, but we had promised his family we would save Tommy. "Emma?" Dad turned to me, his voice cracking. "Is this really you?" "Yes," I said calmly. Are you a doctor?" Mom asked. "I'm a neurosurgeon." "Since when?" "I've been a specialist for 2 years. I've been doing surgery for 5 years total." Jessica covered her mouth with her hands. "Oh my God." David, looking at the TV, asked, Did you perform that surgery?" "Yes." "The 6-hour brain surgery?" "Yes." "David." Mom stood up on trembling legs. "I don't understand. Weren't you a nurse?" "I never said I was a nurse. You assumed that." Dad, amazed, said, "But you told us you worked at the hospital." "I work at the hospital as a surgeon." The interview was ending on TV. "Dr. Rodriguez, how is your patient's condition?" "Tommy is currently in intensive care but stable. His full recovery will take time, but the surgery was successful." "Thank you, Dr. Rodriguez." The TV went to commercial. The living room silence was suffocating. David collapsed in his chair. You're a doctor, a neurosurgeon." "Yes." "Well, I'm still a first-year practitioner. You're performing brain surgeries." "Yes." Mom sat down, buried her head in her hands. "Why didn't you tell us?" "Because you never asked. And I knew I wouldn't get support when I told you." "What do you mean we never asked?" Dad asked. "Every time I came, you asked, 'How's work?' I'd say, 'Fine.' You talk for hours about David's work, but never ask for details about mine." Jessica quietly said, "We thought you were a nurse." "Why did you think that?" Because... David couldn't finish his sentence. "Because you thought girls couldn't become doctors," I finished for him. Mom raised her head. Her eyes were teary. "We didn't think that way." "Mom, what did you say when I told you I was going to start medical school?" Silence. "You said girls don't become doctors. It's too hard. You said become a nurse. It's more suitable." Dad, trying to remember, said, "We were trying to protect you. You were trying to limit me." David spoke for the first time. "Emma, I didn't know. If I had known..." "What would you have done, David?" "I would have respected you. I would have looked up to you." "Do you respect me now?" "Of course. You're much more successful than me. I haven't performed any surgeries yet. You're saving lives." Mom started crying. "Emma, we did very wrong." "Yes, you did. Will you forgive us?" I took a deep breath. "I have conditions." "What conditions?" Dad asked. "From now on, you won't introduce me just as a nurse. I'm Dr. Emma Rodriguez." "Of course." "You'll talk about my achievements as much as you talk about David's." "Certainly." "And you'll never again say, 'Girls can't do this, can't do that.'" Everyone nodded. Jessica asked curiously, "Emma, are you really a neurosurgeon?" "Yes, Jessica. I'm the youngest assistant chief at St. Mary's." David, amazed, asked, "Assistant chief? That's a very big position." "Yes, and next year I'll become chief." Mom proudly said, "My daughter will become chief." "Now you're proud. Where were you 5 years ago?" Dad, ashamed, said, "We were unfair, Emma." We're very sorry." At that moment, my phone rang. They were calling from the hospital. "Dr. Rodriguez, there's an emergency case. They want you to come immediately." "I'm coming." I hung up the phone and turned to the family. "I have to go. There's an emergency surgery." David admiringly asked, "Do they always call you like this?" "Yes, there are emergency cases in neurosurgery." As I put on my jacket, Mom asked, "When will you come again?" "I don't know. It depends on my surgery schedule. Sometimes I stay at the hospital for days." "We didn't know how difficult your job was," Dad said. "Now, you know." As I walked toward the door, David followed me. "Emma, I'm really sorry. You work in the same field as me, much further ahead than me. David, you're just starting. You have a lot to learn. Would you have advice for me?" For the first time, my brother was asking me for advice. "Of course. But first know this. Being a doctor isn't just about knowledge. It requires empathy, patience, and an endless desire to learn. How did you become so successful at such a young age?" "I worked very hard, and I never gave up. I didn't quit just because you didn't support me." "We'll support you from now on." "I hope so." When I arrived at the hospital, the emergency room was bustling. A 35-year-old man had been in a motorcycle accident. There was bleeding in his brain. "Dr. Rodriguez, the patient's condition is critical," said the resident doctor. "We need to take him to surgery immediately." "Are the preparations ready?" "Yes, doctor." As I entered the operating room, my phone rang. There was a message from David. "Emma, I saw your news report. I'm very proud. You're a real hero." I smiled inwardly. Finally, we were starting to get to know each other as a family. The surgery lasted 4 hours. The patient was saved. The family was happy. We had saved another life. When I returned home exhausted the next morning, a surprise was waiting at the door. The whole family had come to greet me. "How did the surgery go?" Mom asked anxiously. "Successful. The patient will recover." "We're proud of you, daughter," Dad said. David came with newspapers in his hands. "Emma, we're in all the newspapers." I looked at the newspapers. My photos were on the headlines. "Young surgeon creates miracles. Assistant chief at 29. Female surgeon's success story." "It's no longer a secret," I said. "Good thing," Mom said. "Hiding you was a mistake. Now let the whole world know how successful my daughter is." That day, we talked as a family for a long time. About the past, future plans, my medical career, David's education. For the first time, my brother saw me as a mentor. For the first time, my family was proud of my achievements. For the first time, I was recognized not as just a nurse, but as Dr. Emma Rodriguez. 6 months later, when I became chief, my family sat in the front row at the ceremony. In my speech, I said, "Success comes not just with talent, but with determination. Even people who didn't support me made me stronger, because I believed in myself." Mom was crying, Dad was applauding, David was smiling proudly. That day, I realized that sometimes your family not believing in you makes you believe in yourself more. And in the end, there's no point in hiding the truth, because success, sooner or later, comes out. I'm Dr. Emma Rodriguez, and now the whole world knows it.